So Casper explains us that we have gone from this monological, it's monism that is one, to a dialogical, that is there are two. How can that work? Listen. The starting point and fundamental principle of dialogical philosophy is I cannot be without you. We do not exist for ourselves. We exist with and for each other. We do not have only encounter, we are encounter. We are dialogue. The other is not the limit of myself. The other is a part and an enrichment of my own existence. So, dialogue is an indispensable step along the path towards human self-realization. The identity of the person can be only an open and dialogical identity. Now that you may understand this last phrase, look at that. Okay. When we speak of anything, we have a definition. What is a definition? The word definition, you have finis. Finis, that means the end, the border. Whenever we give a definition, we give the limit of the thing so that we can speak about it. And when we give these limits, we can say what it is. So, you see here that you have water. Now, this water is is in that glass because it has its identity, I may say, and it is a closed identity. I can easily speak of this water because it's in these limits there. Now, what is an open identity? Just break the glass and you'll have it. You'll have water which will be open. Once again, but where do we go with this? We are not yet at ecumenism. Such dialogue is not only essential and necessary for individuals. Dialogue concerns also nations, cultures, religions. Every nation, culture, religion has its riches and its gifts, but also its limits and its dangers. A nation, culture, religion becomes narrow and evolves into ideology when it closes itself, when it absolutizes itself. Now, I know a religion which is absolute. It's the one which says, I am the only true one. You heard, Casper? Such a religion which says, I am the true one, becomes narrow and evolves into ideology. Do you think that Casper has the faith? No way. He could never say that. And then the other nation, culture, religion becomes the enemy. The clash of civilization, as Huntington calls it, will ensue. Dialogue is the only way to avoid such a disastrous clash. Thus, especially today, dialogue among cultures, religions, churches is a presupposition for peace in the world. It is necessary to pass from antagonism and conflict to a situation where each party recognizes and respects the other as a partner and does not try to impose its own interests and values. You heard well? You have here the principle of ecumenism and also a declaration of war against the Catholic Church. You have it here. In one word, ecumenism is only possible when the Catholic Church renounces its exclusivity. When the Catholic Church renounces to say, I am the only one which is true, then ecumenism is possible. For Casper, the thing, the important thing, the urgent thing is ecumenism, much more than the Church. So, each make his choice. And his choice is, let's demolish the Church. That's on the level of philosophy. Now, let's go at the level of theology. I already wrote a quote some hour ago. The decisive element of the Second Vatican Council's ecumenical approach is the fact that the Council no longer identifies the Church of Christ with the Catholic Church. So this identity is demolished. You see, it goes very far when we just read the words and reflect about them. All this shows that the divisions did not reach down to the roots, nor do they reach up to heaven. The Council distinguishes full communion from imperfect communion. The aim of ecumenical work is the full communion and the fullness of unity. Division did not reach down to the roots, nor reach up to heaven. That's the way Casper presents the difference between the Christian denominations. That's interesting, isn't it? He says that they don't go down to the root. That means that we have common roots and common heaven. Well, let's start with heaven. How does that work? Well, it's simple. God, up there in heaven, looking down there on his children. Well, according to Casper, God will recognize in all these Christians his children, the same family. Of course, he does also see that they are divided. He's not happy with that. Division in the family is never a happy thing, but well, they remain the same family. He's the father of all Christians. Division do not reach heaven. Now, how can it work that they will not go down to the root? Listen. Just that you may know where I take things. This I take from Current Problems in Ecumenical Theology, Casper, year 2000, in Center for Theological Inquiry. What I'm going to quote now, I take from a conference 20th of February of this year in Moscow. The fundamental sacramental by which we are incorporated in the communion with God the Father through Jesus Christ in the Holy Ghost is baptism. Through it, as the Apostle St. Paul says, we are incorporated in the body of Christ. Even if we belong to different ecclesial communities, through the baptism we are already in a deep spiritual communion, though imperfect. This communion man cannot destroy it. It is stronger than the might of sin. The union with Christ for Casper is stronger than the might of sin. Despite our divisions, we are already brothers and sisters in Christ. He seems to have forgotten something. In the moral theology, there is a word, mortal sin. Mortal because it kills. It kills precisely this living union with Christ. You may argue by saying, well, but it's true, but nevertheless, you may have somebody in the state of sin who remains in the church. Not all the mortal sins cut us from the church. So if you speak of the union with the church, you may have, well, that's the traditional teaching, dead branches. That is, the tree is still on the tree, that branch, but it's dead. And we know that thanks to the sacrament of penance, we can revive these branches. But here, he's speaking with people who have left the church, who have done such a sin which the church teaches as breaking. It's a branch which is broken, which is cut away from the tree. There are two sins to which the church links with an excommunication. That means it breaks this communion. It's the sin of heresy, it is against the faith, and schism. Schismatic and heretics, not only they are making a mortal sin, but they are cut from the church. Casper does not know that. The communion is stronger than the might of sin. With this, he has established a very interesting principle now, principle of ecumenism. That is, we have something, all the baptized would have supposedly something in common, and absolutely in common, where you cannot say that somebody is in better shape than the other, because if you are united with Christ, that's great. That will be the root which the division will not touch. As up there in heaven, you have also something in common. It's the Father of all. So the division are just in between. He will say in this conference in Moscow that it is only political, it's only sociological, it's not moral. Does not touch God. You see, once again, but where did he get these ideas? They have nothing to do with the faith. It's not Catholic. Absolutely not. But he explains us that that's the root of ecumenism. Now, you accept these principles. Next step. How are we going to supersede these divisions? If we have such a thing in common, that means, as he said there, we are partners. If we are partners, that means that we have, all of us, to work for this unity. And this we start by looking not on the other, but on ourselves. We start to looking whether we do not have something which is hurting the other. And if we want to be together, we have to kick out what is hurting the other. Now I read Casper again. Besides, the Council is aware of the sinfulness of the members of its own church and of sinful structures existing in the church itself. In the Creed, we say, I believe in the Holy Church. Casper says, I believe in the church of sinful structures. Do we speak of the same thing? And it knows about the need of reforming the shape of the Church. The Constitution of the Church and the Decree of Ecumenism state expressly that the Church is a pilgrim church, and Ecclesia, semper purificanda, which must constantly take the way of penance and renewal. Thus, the ecumenical dialogue fulfills the task of an examination of conscience. Ecumenism is not possible without conversion and renewal. Look at that. Conversion. But he said it was finished now, conversion. It's no longer conversion. Yeah, no. It's not the conversion of the other. It's the conversion of ourselves. About what he speaks there. Now, how is the Catholic Church going to convert? First, I just continue the reading. The ecumenical aim is therefore not a simple return of the others into the fold of the Catholic Church, nor the conversion of individuals to the Catholic Church. Even if this must obviously be mutually acknowledged. Conversion in both directions, when it is based on reasons of conscience. In the ecumenical movement, the question is the conversion of all to Jesus Christ. Where are we going now? Next step. So, we want to be one. We want to be united. But there are divisions. This ecumenism will say this division, not only those who have departed are guilty, we also are guilty. That's why they have begged for forgiveness. All these forgive, they are based on this idea, we are guilty. But now this guilt is not only, they say, actions. They are, as you heard, structures. That means that for them, in the Catholic Church, you have a lot of things which are repelling, which are dividing, as they say. They speak of church dividing difference. Things in the Catholic Church which are bothering the Protestant, the Anglican, the Orthodox. And of course, if we want unity, then we have to get rid of these elements. If you think that here I am building up my own theory, I will just quote Bugnini when he made the new Mass. 1964. The council is not even finished. He has just been appointed responsible for making the new Mass. And he will say, the prayer cannot be an object of scandal. It cannot hurt the others, the prayer. Think a little bit. That's why we are going to take away from the Mass everything that might appear like the shadow of an obstacle to our separate brethren. Might appear like the shadow of an obstacle. What remains? What will remain? Very simple. They have taken away everything that was specifically Catholic. All the flavor, what was tasty, what was Catholic in it has been washed out. taken away. And that's Bonini, 1964. He's already applying these principles of this modern ecumenism. That's why we have this very tremendous feeling of emptiness when we see the new Mass. It's because they have emptied it. And to be sure of their job, they called in Protestant experts to be sure that really nothing is hurting them. They wanted their expression of their feelings. And here you have it. All this was very official. You had, even in the Osservatore Romano, a photograph of the Pope with these Protestant experts. You have it. It's very clear. And this was done in the name of ecumenism. And this work of ecumenism, these modernist people, they are not going to just let it at the level of the Mass. They will throw their projector, their beam, on the whole church. They will look at all the edges, everything that is hurting, that is church dividing, as they say. They are going to take away. In the conference given by Casper to the Anglicans last year, 17th of May 2003, he explains that. It's a striking, it's a gorgeous conference because it's clear. It's clear. He will develop, he says, well, there's a problem with ecumenism. There's a problem. We don't move anymore. There's a crisis there. And so his proposal to go ahead. His proposal is a key, is a word, unity in pluriformity. Pluriformity, multiform. To make it short, every different Christian denomination is like sticking to one geometrical shape, figure. So you will have those who like the triangle, those who want the trapeze, a polygon, a quadrangle, a quadrilatère, lozenge. As long as they stick to their different shapes, we will never have unity. So how are we going to get to that unity? There is a way. Let's have everybody agree that their shape is circular-like. If everybody agrees that their shape is like a circle, then we will have a principle of unity. What I say may seem totally crazy, and it is. But the problem is that they put that in effect. If you don't want to believe me, then listen to that phrase. Prior existing divisive contradictions were transformed and reconciled in complementary assertions, expressions, concerns, and approaches. Existing divisive contradiction were transformed in complementary assertions. I'd like to know how they do that. A contradiction is a contradiction. Now, how do you transform the contradiction into a complementary assertion? I'd like to know. Well, as I say, it's as simple as to say that a triangle is, like a rectangle, a circle. If you would suppose that there would be an opposition, contradiction between the quadrangle and the triangle, then put them into a complementary assertion that is circle, and you're done. Well, of course, there the fuses have blown up. You go into craziness when you start to negate and to refuse the principle of non-contradiction. And that's where they go. He starts in his third part of conference. He will describe 4 levels where ecumenism is going to work. First, the faith. Secondly, the liturgy. Third, the priesthood, the episcopacy, which is the bishops. And fourth, the Pope, the primacy. I don't know whether you're still tired or not. I will not go to everything, but just give you some quotes. First, this concept of pluriformity within unity has consequences for our ecumenical vision. Firstly, it has consequences on our understanding of unity in faith. Yes, how can it be? You see, the purpose of ecumenism is that everybody be one. Now, at the level of the faith, obviously, the Protestants, even amongst themselves, they have hundreds of different faiths, different doctrines. So how can we get to the unity? To confess the same faith, says Casper, does not necessarily mean to confess the same creedal formula. He means by this, well, we may have other creed. The important is not to have the same creed. No, we may have different creeds. The important is that we have, through it, the same faith, which is a real circular quadrangle. And it's exactly the contrary of what the Church has always done. Whenever the Church wants to be sure that somebody is Catholic or has the faith, she requests the profession of faith. We have what we call the apostolic symbol. That means this creed which was prayed by the apostles. That's the creed we pray in the Rosary. The Apostolic Creed. We have in the Mass what we call the symbol of Nicaea, Constantinople. This creed, which was written by the Council of Nicaea, the first council, 325. That's what we profess, just to show that we have the same faith. The only way to show that we have the same faith is to have the same creed. It's so obvious. Casper is going to tell you here exactly the contrary. To say have the same faith does not mean to have the same creed. And now if you look at the way the Church acted, whenever there was a heresy, what did the Church do? The Church forged one key word. And this word was, so to say, the stone. Either you accept it or you refuse it. There was no way to escape. In the first council, Nicaea, against the Arius, who was very tricky, trying to say, well, he's and he's not God and not God and not God. Well, how can we say what he really thinks, if he really has the faith or not? There's one word. Consubstantial. Homoousios. You accept it, then you are a Catholic and you have the faith. You refuse it, you don't have it. Council of Ephesus, you have the Nestorians. You have the word Theotokos, Mother of God. Nestorius was saying Jesus has two persons, a human and a divine. If it is so, Mary is not the Mother of God. She only the mother of one human being. No, the Catholic Church says no, there's only one person. So when Mary gives birth, she does not give birth to a human nature, but to a real person. and this person is God. So she is Mother of God. And throughout Eucharist, transubstantiation, every time the Church, to defend, to protect against heresies, will take one word, and this word will be canonized. It will be, so to say, a dogma. It will be in the canons. The canons, that is the rule. So if you want to be Catholic, you're got to accept that. You have to profess that. Casper says exactly the contrary. And at the level of the faith. Nor is uniformity required in the sacramental dimension of the Church either. And here he will speak of Adai and Mary. And he will say, one of the most renowned liturgists has expressed the opinion that this decision, that is to say that Mass without words of consecration is a valid Mass, this decision is the most important ecumenical decision since the Second Vatican Council, because it touches the very heart of the Eucharist. I tell you, they know what they do. They know. Because it is true. It touches the very heart of the Eucharist. And is therefore of fundamental significance for the concept of pluriformity without unity, within unity. Of course. Now remember, what is the purpose of ecumenism? That all be one. If you look at the Mass, the Catholic Church says you must have so and so and so many requirements to have a valid Mass. A Mass which the Protestants do not have, the Anglicans do not have. So, how are they going to get to unity at that level? Well, if a Mass without consecration can be a Mass, why then not the worshipping, the Last Supper worshipping of the Protestants? They have the words of consecration. Well, they don't have the right minister, but if you start at that level, of course, there's no reason to stop anywhere. The core challenge for this concept and this vision and the sticking point in this question of how far pluriformity is possible is to be found in the question of church ministry. The ecumenical dialogue seems to be blocked in this issue at present. Hence, here we touch upon one of the most sensitive points of the current ecumenical debate. This is all the more relevant as mutual recognition of ministry is fundamental for Eucharistic sharing. Once again, what is the problem of Casper at the level of the priest? Well, if we want unity, of course we must have all the ministers of all the Christian denomination be able to come and get together and concelebrate. But for the time being, of course, once again, the Catholic Church says, well, you need this and that to have a priest, and says the Anglicans don't have, the Protestants don't have priests. So how are we going here to have unity? Casper goes very far at that level. He will not stay at the level of the priest. He will look at the bishop. Why? Because the bishop has the fullness of the priesthood. I quote again. How can we overcome this problem? As I see the problem and its possible solution, it is not a question of apostolic succession, in the sense of an historical chain of laying on of hands running back through the centuries to one of the apostles. This would be a very mechanical and individualistic vision, which, by the way, historically could hardly be proved and ascertained. Here he says the Catholic view, but I would prefer to say the Casperic view is different from such an individualistic and mechanical approach. Yes, how do we have bishops today? We have bishops today because they have received, through the imposition of the hands, the powers from a previous bishop, up to the apostles. That's what we call the apostolicity. And Casper says, no. That's too mechanical. That's too, as he say here, individualistic. So, he says, its starting point is the collegium of the apostles as a whole. Together, they receive the promise that Jesus Christ will be with them till the end of the world. Now, here you have to fasten your seatbelt. So, after the death of the historical apostles, they had to. Now, who is this they? Who after the death, I continue the phrase, so after the death of the historical apostles, they had to co-opt others who took over some of their apostolic functions. How did they do that? After their death. After their death, they had to co-opt others to whom they will give their power. How did they do that? Magic, yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Well, there's a word which here is very interesting. It's also historical. After the death of the historical apostles. Did you ever knew of other than the historical apostles? So, who are they? Anyway, in this sense, the whole of the episcopate stands in succession to the whole of the collegium of the apostles. To stand in apostolical succession is not a matter of individual historical chain, but of collegial membership in a collegium, which as a whole goes back to the apostles, by sharing the same apostolic faith, the same apostolic mission. The laying on of hands is under this aspect a sign of co-optation in a collegium. In other words, what is Casper telling us here? He says, okay, for the time being, the Catholics and the Orthodox say that they have bishops. They say that the others have no bishops. That's a problem. How are we going to have everybody share the same power? Okay, let's say, is to be considered as a bishop the one who belongs to this gremium of authority in any denomination. In this collegium, he called it a collegium. So now, to be in apostolic succession means, I quote, membership in a collegium. Collegial membership in a collegium. Great. We have such a collegium in any kind of denomination because everywhere there is some leadership. So let's call these leaders bishops, and we have it. You see how it works? Well, of course, once again, what has this to do with Catholicism? Nothing. Well, maybe like an atomic bomb in the Catholic Church. But the last, I quote again, before venturing further in this decisive point for the ecumenical vision, that is a renewed communio ecclesiology, I should speak first on another stumbling block, or better, the stumbling block of ecumenism, the primacy of the Bishop of Rome. Or as we say today, the Petrine ministry. Yes, what is Casper going to do with the Pope? How is he going to deal with that one? Because this one, it seems, it's only the Catholics who have it. So, how are you going to do with this one? In our globalized world situation, the biblical testimonies on Peter and the Petrine tradition of Rome are read with new eyes. New eyes. It's not new age, it's new eye. Because in this new context, the question of a ministry of universal unity, a common reference point and a common voice of the universal church becomes urgent. You say, where are we going now? Old polemical formulas stand at odds with this urgency. In other words, excuse me, that was not the word, but it could be the result. Old polemical formulas. That means the dogmas. That's the polemical formulas. Old polemical formulas stand at odds with this urgency. Fraternal relation have become the norm. So what is now important is be nice. Extensive research has been undertaken that has highlighted the different traditions between East and West and has traced the development in understanding and practice of the Petrine ministry throughout the centuries, as well the historical conditionality of the dogma of the First Vatican Council, which must be distinguished from its remaining obligatory content, has become clear. Maybe for him. A curious distinction, the historical conditionality and what remains obligatory in the dogma is now clear for Casper. This historical development did not come to an end with the two Vatican Councils, that goes on. And so also in the future, the Petrine ministry has to be exercised in line with the changing needs of the church. So the church is changing, the needs of the church are changing, we are going to change the Pope accordingly. Which is very funny, is, you may have noticed that, the argument which is used there. He says, okay, now it's clear we can distinguish something which is historical, the historical conditionality, and the remaining obligatory part. When you say so, very clearly you say the historical conditional thing is something very superficial, and the remaining obligatory, that's the essential. That's the first phrase. Then he continues by saying, this part which is superficial continues to change. Conclusion, we have to change everything. You see, there's a swift there in the reasoning. And look now where he comes. These insights have led to a reinterpretation of the dogma of the Roman primacy. This does not at all mean that there are still not enormous problems in terms of what such a ministry of unity should look like, how it should be administered, whether and to what degree it should have jurisdiction. So Caspar does not know whether and to what degree the Pope has any power, because jurisdiction means power. That's what he called reinterpretation of the dogma. And whether, under certain circumstances, it could make infallible statements. So Caspar does not know whether, under certain circumstances, the Pope could make infallible statements. You see how far he goes? Once again, please fasten your seatbelt. We are almost done. Well, I fear that this plane is going to crash, but there is at least a wide consensus about the common central problem, which all churches have to solve. How these three dimensions, highlighted already by the Limac documents on baptism, Eucharist, and ministry, namely, unity through primacy, collegiality through synodality, and communality of all the faithful and their spiritual gifts can be brought into a convincing synthesis. That's what you call ecclesiastical garbage. So, we are united, at least in a common problem. That's the conclusion of Caspar. After having gone through the whole town with his bulldozers, having kicked down everything, so now we are united, at least in a common problem. Though the answers still differ. To find a common answer is one of the main problems which you are faced with, and a challenge requiring further clarification, which I'm going to, not to share, but to the contrary. I'm not going to share it with you. I'm going to spare it. Well, that's Caspar. You cannot say it's an abuse, or it's I don't know what, it's a crazy person. He is the right hand of the Pope, doing what the Pope considers as the main thing of his pontificate. And if you see clearly, he explains us here what he's doing. In the name of ecumenism. What is ecumenism? We said at the start that we thought that it was a movement trying to promote the unity by calling back all the poor who had gone off the church. No, not at all. Ecumenism is a demolition instrument, a terrific demolition instrument of the Catholic Church. Period. It has a tremendous, wonderful exterior appearance. Yes, it has a noble, because it's noble, it's beautiful to see this peace, to have all these poor people who are let's say, on the streets, so that they come back in the one fold. Yes, it's a very noble fight under the name, under the appearance of this noble function. They have introduced a tremendous, horrifying demolition system. Its name, ecumenism. And look at the church. Look at the shape of the church today. This work is already done in great parts. Church is empty. Everywhere, disaster, demolition. The work is done. The Pope himself, speaking of Europe, is going to speak of a silent apostasy. He uses the words. He laments on that. They have caused it. You know, when we try to tell them that, well, of course they don't like that, but they say, no. It's the world. It's the influence of the world which has done that. And we answer, when you see your carpet wet, you don't say it's the rain who did it. You don't say it's the storm who made that. You said, who is that silly person who let the windows open? At the beginning of the council, John the 23rd said that he wanted to open the windows of the church to the world. They knew in 62 that the revolution of 68 was coming. They knew that there was a storm coming, and they did exactly the contrary of what any sensitive man is doing when the storm is coming. When you have your home, you just go around all the windows to just check that they are well closed when the storm is coming. And you don't open them. That's what they have done. Now they can lament. It is true that these principles are the principles of the world, but when you do make them come in, then you cannot lament that the damage is done. Yes, this is what we are facing. These, I may say, are the persons we are dealing with. Well, not exactly, because I can tell you, Castrillon does not like Casper at all. But nevertheless, what can he do against? What does he say against? Nothing. Which remains the same. We cannot just forget the others and say, well, let's deal with only Castrillon. No, we deal with Rome. And obviously, Casper is a part of Rome. And that's why we're not going to make agreements as long as the situation is such. We say no. We say, first, step down from this ecumenism, come back to the normal Catholic Church, and then we will speak about agreement. In this letter to the Castrillon, I wrote, and I will finish with this, at baptism, we enter into a contract with the Church, which is expressed from the first phrase of baptism. What do you ask from the Church? And the answer is the faith. What does faith give you? Eternal happiness, eternal life. So that means that the Church is granting us the faith. You say, okay, you come to us and I give you the faith. It's a contract, there is an obligation. The Church obliges herself to give us the faith. And I say that's what we request, which we demand from Rome, the faith. We want the faith, nothing else. The faith that saves, that leads to heaven. And the faith which is not shortened down, No, the whole thing we want. What Jesus has entrusted to his apostles, this faith we want, nothing else. And I continue by saying, and as long as Rome does not try to dissipate this smoke which has entered the temple of God, does not fight against what is paralyzing the life of the church, as long as they don't go back to the root of these problems, which are the council, the new mass, there will not be an agreement. Because it means to kill ourselves. The very day when Rome shows that they have understood that they want to come back, it will not happen in one day. You can imagine, there will be a fight. But when Rome is ready for the fight and to take the price for it, then we can step in. But as long as we are not backed up by Rome, it's a waste to step in. So what do we have to do? Well, continue. Just continue. There will be a time, God knows when. For us, we have to absolutely not precipitate these things. The result, the outcome is way, way, way above our, let's say, actions. I may say it's too big what is at stake here. It's not only our persons, it's the faith and the continuation of the church. And we can never pretend that we are going to do that. We are little instruments of the good Lord in that story. That's it. Let's be faithful. Let's do our job, period. God will do the rest. But let's be faithful. Let's go on our knees every day and ask the good Lord for this faithfulness. This word faithful is so great. And every Catholic has the honor and the glory to wear it. So let's be faithful. And for that, let's go under the protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary and ask her for this grace. Those who will be faithful till the end shall be saved. That's our Lord has said. Thank you for your patience.
Can you give us a blessing, Your Excellency?
Sit nomen Domini benedictum, aiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini, benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et maniat semper.